What was the incident in your high school? Part 1. A girl in her final year got pregnant and was hiding it from her parents. She was 18 at the time, though. She went to the counselor, qualified clinical psychologist, who was helping her through it. The counselor walked her through all of her options and did what she was supposed to do. The girl, I think possibly in denial, carried the baby to quite far along but then wanted out. She was also starving herself. Long story short, I also can't remember all the exact details. She apparently went to a dodgy clinic where she convinced them she was much earlier in the pregnancy, guessing they did no tests, and they gave her abortion pills or something like that. Like I said, can't remember the exact dates, so don't crucify me. She started profusely bleeding in class the next day and was rushed to hospital. The baby survived for about 4 hours and then passed away. Obviously, by this point, her parents were there. Upon questioning, she named out school counselor and said that she had forced her to have an abortion. This whole case went to court. Our poor school counselor could not say anything or defend herself publicly until the case was done. We had reporters outside our school gates for ages. It all came out at the end that the girl had lied, and the counselor was completely innocent and had just done what she was supposed to do, and had offered the girl all the information and advice for her to make an informed decision. I was amazed at how professional the counselor was, and how she did everything by the book when it came to speak about her client. Anyway, that was crazy. If the student was over 18, they're legally obligated to keep all the student's information private. If she had told anyone, she would certainly have lost her license to practice and possibly faced criminal charges as well. A football player with the last name Param got punished for some stuff and was no longer allowed to walk the stage for graduation. One day, a friend of his pulled up in a truck outside of the cafeteria during lunch, slammed on the brakes, jumped out, and proceeded to sprint inside. He streaked through half the cafeteria with a Spider-Man mask on and "Free Param" painted on his butt. Staff tried to grab him and stop him, and despite him literally slipping on a piece of food and falling, he escaped valiantly, as any hero should. Eventually, Param was once again allowed to walk the stage, although I'm sure the stunt wasn't the only reason for it. So this happened yesterday, and it was pretty wild for a Canadian school. At the end of the day, there was a police car at the front of the school. Someone said they saw a kid get arrested when they went to the washroom. At the end of the day, a cop and the principal were standing at both back passenger windows talking to someone inside. We all just assumed that someone was getting arrested for selling drugs or something. The next day, my homeroom teacher told us between 3rd and 4th period, the 2 afternoon periods in Canada, a former student who was about 20 years old blended in with students and snuck into the school hallways. He wandered through the hallway stealing from unlocked lockers and actually stole about 10 laptops from teachers' classrooms somehow. They ended up catching him at the Tim Hortons down the road. Not sure what's going to happen to him, but someone said his mom was his getaway vehicle a couple blocks down the road. He just had to stop at Timmy's first. Only in Canada do people have to stop for a coffee and a donut mid-robbery. Gotta say, I think I may have one up on this one. When I was in high school, I helped out with IT. We had a workroom just off the gymnasium that kept the Apple servers and other computers for the entire school. One day, I arrived school, and there were tons of police everywhere, crime tape, etc. around multiple classrooms and the gym, so I asked around about what happened. Apparently, during the night, someone had come and used heavy-duty power tools to saw off the exterior door hardware, doorknobs, locks, hinges, and gain access to the school. Classrooms are also locked, and the same technique was used on those doors. Long story short, the folks that broke in went into our server room, the computer lab, and the art classrooms and stole over $100,000 of computers. Police were talking to many students. There was even a small line of kids waiting to talk. The police obviously believed it was an inside job. About a week later, a couple of my classmates weren't in homeroom. Word quickly got around that they had borrowed their dad's work equipment and committed the crime. How were they caught? Not surprisingly, bragging about it. They had a stockpile of dozens of machines and tried to put them outdoors under a tarp to keep them hidden. Their friends found out. At that point, they'd been able to sell some of the machines on eBay and had already sold about $10,000 worth. Keep in mind, both these kids were 16. Totally insane that they almost pulled it off. What happened to them? Just juvie and alternative school. We had a bad rain, and apparently, the tarp covering and under the computers had a few holes, so most of the computers were damaged beyond repair. My high school was recently in the news because a virus got into our school system and held the school's data at ransom for $300,000. Ours was a sad one. Our boys' basketball team was traveling home from a game in inclement weather. The van caught some slush and lost control into the path of an oncoming tractor trailer. The coach was driving and survived. He lost his wife and 7 students. A very sad tragedy. The survivor's guilt and just guilt in general that coach felt is probably unimaginable. I didn't transfer in until after it happened, but I had a classmate who was in the room when it happened. Our 9th grade year, 1989 to 1990, one of the guys in the theater and drama class had been threatening suicide and to hurt friends and classmates. She and all her friends went to the teachers and principal, but were told they could do nothing because he had no history and therefore he had to do something first. He did. Walked in mid-class, took the entire room, including my friend and her friends who had reported his threats, hostage, brandished the gun around repeatedly, then shot one of their mutual friends who was trying to talk him down. Kid lost his ear, but not his life, thankfully. She was still giving legal depositions 2 years later when I met her, which is how I heard the story. This would definitely be negligence on the school's part, which is why she was giving depos. There is a general duty to protect your students, especially in the face of actual threats. It also sounds like you have multiple kids reporting multiple incidents, so the idea that you could say the kid had no history is laughable. He might not have had a file, but a simple investigation would likely have revealed even more incidents. One of the girls in my grade made cupcakes with cum from a guy friend of hers, hair and toenails baked into them. She brought them to school and gave them to the people who bullied her. My sister had PE with some of the people who ate the cupcakes, and needless to say, they were not happy. This sounds suspiciously like that one Cards Against Humanity card. Oh man. One time, this kid I was friends with brought this hot sauce called the bomb, 1.5 million Scoville units, to high school and let a bunch of kids try it during lunch. I mean, at least 30 kids. Some kids really started freaking out because that is ridiculously hot. Like, you're supposed to add 1 or 2 drops to a big batch of chili to make it spicy. Some were trying to show off and took a swig of it, and ended up vomiting everywhere from the heat and panic. Multiple kids had to go to the nurse and be sent home because they way overdid it, although I think most just really had no idea what a Scoville unit was or that they made hot sauce that was that ridiculously hot. It was chaos. I tried it as well, a dime size amount, and I couldn't concentrate on anything but chugging milk, and I'm really good with spicy foods. Finally, the principal came on the intercom and said, "Whoever brought the hot sauce, please, just stop." My friend got into some pretty big trouble for that one. That's the principal's sound of defeat. Any teacher, really. When I break that one out in the classroom, I'm officially admitting defeat and pleading. 2 girls were fighting over a boy. They were in the bathroom, in the same stall. While they were fighting, one of the girls took out a pair of scissors and stabbed the other in the eye. The girl who stabbed her was expelled, and the other girl turned out to be just fine, and went back to school like everything was normal. The creepy part was, my classroom was the closest one to the bathroom, and we didn't hear anything. We just saw the cops. It creeps me out to think it happened a couple feet away from me. Someone called in a bomb threat to my middle school and elementary school. Instead of evacuating both buildings, we were in lockdown for 3 hours, and they condensed all of us in the middle school. We later evacuated to the high school only like 300 feet away, and were stuck there for hours because our parents couldn't get to us. All of our phones were taken because they didn't want us giving information, so there were like 700 white moms in Suburban simultaneously having a heart attack trying to get to the school. We learned later they called us in to almost every school in the area. There was a robbery at a Bank of America while the cops were preoccupied. Another school in the district had a student come to an assembly dressed in a KKK hood, so we all had to have a huge assembly, and there were a bunch of posters around school about what to do if you feel discriminated against. Being racist aside, what was he thinking? I'm assuming this was his thought process. "Oh boy, I can't wait to show the high school my dad's sick ghost costume. I sure do hope this won't cause outcry." We had an in-building sub who would be the first sub called and usually worked every day at the school. A few months into school, he was arrested and fired because it turned out he was getting 2 students to blow him after school. They were 14. He was caught because one of the girls' parents had installed some program on their computer and found the AIM chats. He ended up killing himself before going to jail. It was the last day for the senior class. There were only 2 significant pranks that day. The principal's office was filled with balloons and glitter, and the main hallway entrance was saran wrapped. About an hour before the day ended, the principal came over the loudspeaker and said that anyone caught participating in a prank would not walk at the graduation ceremony. About a minute after he said this, the fire alarm went off. A guy who was near the principal said that he got angry and said out loud, "Someone's not walking," before storming off. An entire wing of the school was hazy and smoke was pouring out of the classroom. Turns out the science teacher was doing a laser experiment for his class and created too much smoke with a smoke machine. Balloons and glitter? I hope they were balloons filled with glitter to create surprise glitter explosions. At my high school, seniors had to do a senior project. Can be anything really, just plan it out and follow through. A very popular and well-liked senior made an end-of-day announcement that tomorrow morning he'd be in the student parking lot working on it and needed as many folks there as possible. The next day, he drives into the student parking lot, sets up a tripod and a camera. A large crowd gathered round, just about 30 minutes before the first bell. He hit record, thanks everyone for showing. Then he reached into his car, pulled out a handgun and killed himself before anyone could react. No one knows why. He was a great guy with a bright future. Never know what struggles others are going through. I think about it frequently and take that into consideration to try and be nice to others with random acts of kindness. Kid in my high school killed himself by self-immolation. Story went that his girl had left him. He was a smart kid. Never saw him get bullied. Was on the swim team, was in shape, all that. Was in the advanced program in our high school and had scholarships. Some of my circle of friends were also in the advanced program, which was like 30 kids per year. They knew him a little better than I did, and his parents were very hard on him. I don't remember or know too much, to be honest. But I did hear from my friends who knew him that he killed himself by lighting himself on fire.